I'm Rodney Orpheus. I'm the guy that doesn't know how to press the mute button despite having spent 30 years mixing records. And this is the first episode of Desert Island Nerds. What we're going to do each week in Desert Island Nerds, I am going to interview a geek culture hero of some type. And I've got some really interesting guests lined up for the next few weeks. And the one tonight is definitely very interesting. And what the show is about, it's about if you only had one geeky thing of each type on a desert island, what would it be? Because us nerdy people, we love our stuff. We love our books and our comic books, and that's a VR system up there. There's a keyboard down there. We love all our stuff. But if I only could have one musical instrument or one gadget or one comic book on a desert island, what would it be? So I'm going to be asking my guests each week a random selection of questions about nerdy stuff that they like. And we're going to be talking about how that influenced their life and their career. So the first guest tonight is somebody whose name you probably do not know. Hi, Zelda. And hi, Vixen, and hi, Kaylin, and David, and X Studios. Nice to see you all. Now, you probably don't know this guy's name, but I guarantee you know his work because he has been behind some of the most iconic geeky stuff of the last couple of 2 or 3 decades now. So let's start with a clip that I think doesn't really need any introduction. I think you will know this one when you see it. All right, and that was, of course, Matrix Reloaded, and the guy behind those visual effects is this gentleman here, Mr. Brian Freisinger. Hi, Brian. So Brian's been a visual effects artist and animator for a very long time, and he has worked on some incredible movies and video games and whatever, and we are going to talk about when he did Matrix Reloaded. I mean, come on. The fucking Matrix, man. I mean, that is like you go instantly to the top of the geek credibility thing. How the hell? What did you actually do on that truck crash thing? Mm-hmm. Oh, hang on. No sound on Brian, they're saying. Oh, God. All right, now you're on, Brian. Okay, thank you, Zelda.
Mixed records?
Yeah. What can I tell you?
I know.
It's a one-band band here.
That's okay. I've done the lens cap thing on before, too. And I've been doing this for 20 plus years.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for making me feel better.
So Matrix Reloaded, that scene particularly, it was funny. It was one of the very first scenes we actually started working on when Escape Entertainment was put together by Warner Brothers to do those films. Literally the first week we didn't have computers yet. So we were actually messing around with clay and that truck crash, trying to figure out what we wanted to do.
You modeled it in clay?
Roughly, yeah. Just
like when you were like 5 years old.
Yeah. And I think originally I want to say there was a bus involved with that, and it evolved with the storyboards. And it eventually became the 2 semi-trucks that were crashing together. And there was 2 real trucks. We were working at the time out in the old Alameda Naval Base, which actually had the old runways. So out there they built.
I've been there. You took me there.
I did take you there. And if you actually go out there today and you look, you'll see the walls for the freeway are gone, but the actual freeway marks are still, painted it up.
They actually built a freeway, right?
Yeah. So, we looked at this is the early 2000s, obviously, and a lot of stuff which is really easy now was really complex back then. Simulation software was kind of in its infancy for a lot of these things. So the actual 2 cabs, when they were going to crash together, we tried a couple of methods. And I ended up having to go in. Myself and a modeler named John Daniel built these cabs and built the whole trucks. And then I actually had to go in and physically mold and model those things step by step as they started coming together and crashing so they would intertwine. We tried a lot of different methods, and that's when it ended up working. For the trailers themselves, that was dynamically simulated to do all that crunching. And then, of course, we had people that did the smoke and the fire. I mean, there are times when you do a shot by yourself, but on something of that scale, there's a whole team of people, and everybody's got their own little part to play. So yeah, so that's kind of what I did on that.
Okay, so you live in California right now, but you're originally from somewhere. I met you in
La Crosse,
Minneapolis,
Wisconsin, and we met in Minneapolis, which is 3 hours south of there.
La Crosse, Wisconsin.
La Crosse, Wisconsin, right on the Mississippi River.
All right. So I guess So to get to so I get you're a visual artist. How was it? Comic books? Is that the first geeky thing you got into as a kid? Were you a comic book fan?
Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons.
And comic books and stuff, but again, living in the Midwest, I think we had 3 television channels back then. You know, I'm old, so we didn't have cable, we didn't have satellites, so we literally, on a good day, if it wasn't snowing, we had maybe two channels, maybe 3. So a lot of us, you know, and in winter is freezing there. You can play outside to some degree, but at some point you're you sit, you're
going to lose extremities.
Games. Yeah. Yep. So we played games like Dungeons and Dragons and Call of Cthulhu, and what was some of the other ones we played? Gamma World.
Gamma World, my God, that's
Gamma
going
World,
back.
I know. We played Gamma World.
Was that another Gary Gygax thing as well?
I believe it was.
Yeah. Post-apocalyptic, everyone living in bunkers. Yeah, it was good training for 2020, right?
Exactly, right. So it was a lot of that, and then you know, you spend a lot of time drawing and painting, and just you're bored, so you're making things with castle blocks, and I mean, you basically have to kind of explore your creative side when you're snowed in. So it's that, or you pull a Shining and you go after the whole family with an axe. So, but no. So you know, and luckily I had a pretty creative family too. I had one side of my family, a lot of people drew and sculpted, and the other side, my father was a musician. So you know, that's kind of how that started. And I went to school to be a fine artist, actually. And while I was in school, computers sort of popped up, and Macintosh. And I remember my first job, I was working at an ad agency, and Strata Studio Pro, which was one of the very early 3D programs, popped up, and I started playing with it, and I realized I had no idea what I was doing. And this was early 90s. And by, I think, 1995, I started really looking into 3D, and I found that I found 2 programs. One was in San Francisco, and one was in Vancouver. And I ended up choosing the San Francisco program because they had a bigger computer lab. Because back then it was SG, you had to work on an SGI.
Right.
And you couldn't just buy this for home like now. You know, the computer was $50,000, and I want to say it was Autodesk at the time, or it wasn't Autodesk. I'm sorry, it was Alias Wavefront. It was before Maya. And the software at that time, maybe I'm getting it reversed. Maybe the SGI was $100,000 and the software was $50,000, plus a $5,000 a year licensing fee, which in 1995 as a college student, that's, I mean, $150,000. No. And plus then you don't know how to use it. YouTube's not around to teach you anything. I mean, everything was, you know, fly by night. You just had to figure it out. And so that's kind of how I ended up going from Wisconsin to this. Yeah, I remember
SGIs. Well, I was working at Steinberg making music software, and we actually had these giant computers. I managed to wangle one from my desk, and it was like, one of the developers like, here, take this SGI. If you can make it work, then you can use it. And it was like 25 grand's worth of computer, and it's like this giant thing, you know. And it was just, and it ran Unix, and it was like the precursor to everything. I mean, it was like it was Mac OS 20 years before Mac OS was.
Right.
If they knew,
was it Unix or?
It was Unix, yeah. It was totally Unix, yeah. Oh, it was their own kind of Unix, whatever it was.
Right.
IRIX, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
This is old school nerd chat, folks.
I know. I've heard a story, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that if you find an old SGI, that some of the circuit boards have gold in them, and it's like pirate treasure inside of an old SGI.
Awesome. Oh, that's very funny. All right. So, what's next? So, all right, let's ask you some more nerdy questions. I've got 20 different themes here. Somebody in the chat give me a number between 1 and 20, and we'll ask them about that. Random number
Somebody said I'm very quiet.
Brian's very quiet? Are you still very quiet? No, that was earlier.
Oh, okay.
11. Okay, 11.
Brian's very loud. Oh, number 11. That's it.
Clothing. All right. If you were only allowed to take one outfit to your desert island, what would you be taking? Is it that cute Japanese anime cosplay outfit that I know you like?
I was going to say, yeah, just my very European banana hammock. It is a desert island, right?
Well, it could also be, given this current situation, quarantine. Yeah, for those of you who are watching this in the far distant future, we are currently recording and broadcasting this live from Quarantine 2020, the coronavirus tapes.
One item of clothing
or one outfit.
Desert. One outfit. God, that's a tough one. Am I alone, or do I have to entertain people? Or can I scare people?
Hi, Sunday. Still, thanks for the follow. Well, you're pretty scary doing anyway, so
Yeah, right.
You tell me,
I think
man.
actually, if I'm on a desert island, I can only take one outfit because I used to live in New Zealand, I did a lot of free diving. So I'd definitely take my one outfit would be my free diving gear.
I guess that makes sense on a desert island. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be out there spearfishing for dinner.
Yeah, because you do all that stuff, man. The weird thing is, folks, this is the weird thing about this Brian Freisinger guy. He spends like 95% of his time sitting in a darkened room in front of a computer doing graphics. But the other 5% of the time, he actually is a kind of a superhero. He literally goes spearfishing and does martial arts and
Brazilian jiu-jitsu and MMA. That's right.
Yeah, he's actually a cage fighter. He literally is a cage fighter as well as a spearfisher and an animator.
I wouldn't do I wouldn't say as much as cage, but my last match was fought in was a submission only match, and it was in a motorcycle club in East Bay. So we were tag teaming, and it was tag team Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So it was really, really grappling. And what happened was it was actually great rules. So what happens is if somebody's tapped out, so there was no points, it was just submission. So if your partner gets tapped out, you're automatically in. So if I'm behind somebody and I got the hooks in and I'm putting a rear naked choke on him, I need to get him off me when he taps because his partner's flying in. But it made it a lot more of a dynamic match because I'm sitting there trying to control somebody's wrist and maybe get a choke on, but their other arm's free and they're reaching back for their partner. So I have to make decisions. Do I try to submit him or do I try to control both hands? And it's really exhausting. But again, it made it a lot more dynamic than just, two guys on the ground, moving in inches and trying to submit each other.
Okay, sooner you than me, pal. Yeah. Hey, Constantine. Yeah, look, you've got a fan here. Obsidian Vixen's like, oh my god, a cage fighter nerd. Yes,
cage. I don't do full on like UFC, MMA. It's mostly grappling. So,
all right. Maybe we should have another clip of some of your work. Let's see what we've got here. I know what. Let's try this one. This is another movie that I think you guys might know. And let's have a look at it.
Who's that working on? This is one of my top 2 favorites.
So I think you guys probably know what movie this is. Yeah, Vixen, it is indeed. It's Serenity. It's the movie of Firefly. So what did you actually do in this one, Brian?
I was the modeling supervisor. I built about half the stuff you see on there. I designed a lot of the Reaver ships. Worked on, we had one modeler that was working on Serenity, and I had to touch it for a couple of things. And I mean, you name it. I worked on a lot of different things on here, but mostly I built the ships. And actually, there's a ship in here that's called the Orpheus 418 that I built for Rodney. And as like the real Orpheus, it gets torn apart by Reaver ships because that's the myth, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So that's it's not in this clip. It's when they're in Reaver space. But yeah, no. There was a lot of different elements that went into this. I actually got hired as a contract artist for this right after. We finished working. I finished working on Lady Killers, the Coen Brothers film, and Warner Brothers had decided to shut our studio down for financial reasons, like most plays, and that's just a normal thing in my industry. It's like you'll work for a couple of films, then you're on to the next one. So I got hired contract for this, and then I eventually went down to Los Angeles and worked for Zoic Studios, which was the main visual effects company doing this, and they had done Firefly as well, and this was also Zoic had done Battlestar Galactica and quite a few others, and there's a great team there. I mean, they already had an amazingly good core team. So yeah, I got to, we when I got down there, we were sort of, it was I want to say it was a low budget film, but they didn't have a really big budget at the time, if I recall, for an art department. So there were some rough sketches of ships, but it was all kind of TBD at the time. So for Reaver ships, we started I remember, I think Josh Whedon described them to us as, he kind of was talking about like them as being tinkerers and taking whatever they found and sort of slapping it onto their ships. I had never seen Firefly when I started working on this, so I went out and
You'd never seen Firefly? Oh my God.
I had never seen it, so I went out and bought the DVDs and I watched it. And specifically, I was looking for Reavers. I wanted to see what the Reavers, and they hadn't done much with them yet because they hadn't really been well defined. They've mostly been teased about in that season. This is one of my ships right here coming in. That was actually, that was one of the very first ships.
This thing that's opening up?
Right, and I designed that. He wanted, Josh described those, he wanted sabers. I had weapons on him initially, and he wanted them to be like sabers almost. So it looked like, something that would chop up another ship for parts. That was the whole idea. That's what that ship did, is it would tear apart other ships. Because that's what they do, right? They capture other ships, they take the parts, and they strap them on. And then one of the whole other background ideas, that's the operative ship and the operative. One of the other background ideas behind this, the Reavers, was the fact that they could, they would take all the, any safety mechanisms off of their engines. That's why they were smoking and running. So they were running hot and running fast because they didn't care. Like zero fucks given. Oh, can I say that on here? Sorry.
Yeah, of course you can. This is the internet. It's the internet. Zero fucks are given everywhere on the internet.
Zero fucks were given by the Reavers. Their whole idea was to, catch and kill, right? Catch and eat. And so yeah, that's a little bit about that. It's kind of funny. One of my favorite ships on there is the one that rams the operative ship. Is Joss Whedon he wanted a battering ram, and I remember, and so we kept going through different variants of what this battering ram would be, and I started just looking at modern battering rams, and I started looking at icebreaker ships. And so I took an icebreaker ship and I flipped the bow upside down and I put it on the front of, because everything looked flimsy. Like you're thinking these giant ships, how would one ram into another one and survive? And so yeah, I took an icebreaker ship, flipped the bottom of it, and stuck it on the front of one of the Reaver ships, and poof, we had our ramming ship. It's the ship that actually rams into the operative ship at some point there. So yeah, no, this was definitely one of the funnest movies I think I ever worked on. The budget wasn't huge at the time.
It looks like a huge budget.
It surprisingly it wasn't. There was just such a talented team of people at Zoic. I mean, it was like it was a small amount of people that can make it look like 100 people doing it. Everybody that was at Zoic Studios, that whole studio by itself anyway is just an amazing, they still are. I mean, that's still a great studio. They always put out some of the best work. Lonnie, the owner, he's I don't want to call him a perfectionist, he is, but it's not like, he's just got a high standard. That's what I should say. And wonderful guy to work for. I mean, that was one of my favorite places I've worked over the years. I mean, and of course Escape. I love working at Escape, so.
Right. So what else did you do at Escape?
Well, this was before Serenity. So Escape, we worked on Matrix 2 and 3, but we worked on them as though they were like one film. So that was 4 years of just nonstop.
4 years.
Yeah, I know, right? 3 or 4 years. It was just not, and that started at Mannix before I was even at ESC. That's a whole tale. But we did the original virtual human work at Mannix. So to do what was called the Burly Brawl sequence, to do the virtual Neo and the virtual. And
you did the Trinity thing, right?
Yeah, and the Trinity out the window. So
we've got to have that one. That is freaking like. Oh, thanks for the follow, John and Ferry. Okay, let's talk us through. This is like one of the greatest opening sequences ever, in my opinion. Oh. Let's just level it up over there. There we go. So what did you actually do on this? I mean, it's funny. One of the models,
Geo, and I'm spacing on his last name right now because it's been 20 years. Did the body, I did the head.
That's an animation. It's not actually her.
Yeah, no.
So that's not actually her.
That's an actual. There's parts of it. It flips back and forth. Right.
All right.
So a lot of these times, and it's been a million years. Like obviously, there's times things are real, and there's times things are digital, and it's really just dependent on the situation. Like that's her face.
Right.
You know, but the guns and some other stuff. So a lot of times it's just a superimposing of things. The guns themselves actually were their mini Uzis, and this is again in the early 2000s. And I on a whim I emailed IMI over in Israel and said, "Hey, I'm working on this movie."
The company that manufactures the Uzi, right?
Yeah, they sent me the blueprints for it. So I wish I still had those.
You emailed the company and got the blueprints of the mini Uzi. I love your attention to detail, man.
Well, you know, I knew they were going to be. We call a shot like that a paint scraper. When it gets close to camera, it's close enough to scrape the paint. So anytime you get a paint scraper shot, you want to make sure the detail's perfect. Because there's a funny story about this. There was people actually after the Matrix came out that were going through frame by frame during one of the freeway chases. We had to take the axles out of a lot of the CG trucks because the cameras were going through them. Mm-hmm. So to get the cameras to go underneath trucks and to go under things, we took the axles out. And people went through frame by frame. Were like, these guys suck. They didn't even put the axles in the car. I was like, like this your whole world is tied up. I've had people ask me some of the weirdest, like, why did you do this? I'm like, I don't know. You know, I was working. I think it was I don't remember if it was a Serenity or a Star Trek thing. I was working. Somebody asked me at a convention, and I was speaking at in Ireland years back about why we had left one thing in one scene and taken it out in the other, and I just shrugged and said we probably forgot to put it in. And he had this dejected look on his face, like, you know, I think he was looking for some greater meaning or conspiracy. I'm like, oh, we probably screwed up, because it happens, you know. There's an old joke, and my friend I used to work with, Greg Juby, used to say, he goes, "Final just means you ran out of time," you know.
Right.
So I would still say it to this day. It's like when it makes it to the screen, sometimes when you see mistakes or you see things, we just ran out of time. And a lot of people have been looking at things for a long time, and everybody might miss it because we've all been looking at the same shot for months and months and months, and it gets out, and then all of a sudden you're in the theater and you look up there and everybody for the first time sees it and goes, you know, but it happens.
Hilarious. Okay. So, well, on the subject of science fiction, what's your one science fiction book you can bring to a desert island? What would it be?
Science fiction.
Well, you are a science fiction fan, I assume?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Neuromancer.
Neuromancer, William Gibson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a classic. The first ever, well, arguably the first ever cyberpunk book. And I'm sure several of the people here who are watching this have read Neuromancer. And I haven't read the new one, though. Apparently the new one is really good. He's still writing, and apparently the new one is excellent. Perfect choice to Zick Studio. He's a bit of a cyberpunk too. Hi, Andrew. Yeah, Andrew's a bit of a cyberpunk. By the way, anybody who's watching, do feel free. We're watching the chat. If you've got any questions for Brian.
Yeah, I can see the chat here too. So.
Yeah, so we're more than happy to take questions while we're going through. Yeah, I mean, Neuromancer was really, that was an event when that book came out. It changed everything. I mean, I did an album called Cyberpunks. I mean, because it was like, whoa. And it was like a total literary revolution. It was like, I guess, you know, there's probably three movements in science fiction, really, that I would think are really important. There was like the original science fiction, you know, pulp, astounding stories, rocket ships going to space, all that kind of stuff. And then there was kind of like the New Worlds era in the 60s, where you had Michael Moorcock and Norman Spinrad, Philip K. Dick, and everything was very psychedelic, and it became really surreal and staggeringly great, and the science fantasy. And then the third big movement to me was cyberpunk. It was William Gibson, it was Bruce Sterling, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you know, as an adjunct to that too, when you say Philip K. Dick, one of the things I think people overlook sometimes, not just the books, but the cover art at the time.
Yeah, really.
So like, there's look at everybody that's watching. Look up a guy named Bob Pepper.
Bob Pepper. Okay.
Bob Pepper was like, you'll see his work, and it's like you were talking about me. It's like you've seen my work, but you don't know his name. Mm-hmm. Bob Pepper did, and he's still alive. I would love to get some of his work. Weirdly enough, I don't think he's ever actually sold any.
Maybe we should get him on the show.
Oh my! If you could get Bob Pepper on the show, it'd be amazing. But yeah, Bob Pepper's cover art for some of those, like especially when I think of the Philip K. Dick stuff, is just amazing. I mean, some of those early science fiction art is just that 70s, and it's a little psychedelic in it, but it's really cool. So
yeah, well, we're gonna have to try and get hold of him. I do. I mean, having talked to Philip K. Dick, I do have a Philip K. Dick associated guest that I'm hoping to have on the show in a few weeks' time, which is David Hansen, who is the robotics expert who made the android of Philip K. Dick.
Yeah, right.
So I'm hoping to have David on the show. Hansen Robotics, yeah. So I'm hoping to have David on the show with some of his robots, which I think would be really cool, make a really cool show. And because I've actually had dinner with the android of Philip K. Dick, and that was a bizarre. That was the most Philip K. Dick experience that I could possibly imagine. So it was really good. And also on that subject, I'm also secretly hoping that I can get Michael Moorcock on the show, because he is the greatest science fiction writer of all time.
Yeah,
and
I'm a huge Elric fan, and I'm a huge Chronicles of Corum fan.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, so this is what I'm aiming for that as well. He hasn't said yes yet, but I would give my left arm to have Michael Moorcock on the show. He is the greatest.
I must have read Elric like I don't know how many times. In fact, one of my ships in Elite Dangerous, yes, I play Elite Dangerous, everyone, is called Stormbringer. It's the big black, what do you call it, the Imperial cruiser that I've got is like with a black midnight paint on it because it looks like a big sword, so I call it Stormbringer.
Okay, how many people here understand the Stormbringer reference? How many Elric fans do we have in the chat? I would love to know. Anybody an Elric fan? Michael Moorcock?
If you haven't read it, do yourself a favor and read it.
Nobody's saying anything. Maybe it's because of the delay on the chat. Oh, there we go. Zelda Twinkle Toes. She knows Michael Moorcock. She's as old as we are, probably. And there's all these 20-year-olds watching the show going, "What? Who's that? What? Who's that?"
That's another one with some great cover art as well through time. If you go back and look at some of the
James Cawthorne, he did the cover art for the Elric stuff. Amazing guy.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too. And I won't lie. I mean, and I think a lot of kids did that back in the day. Being an artist, I was always drawn sometimes not by what the book was about, but I'd see good cover art and go, "Oh, that looks cool," and I'd buy it. And sometimes you roll the dice and you're like, "Ooh, Snake Eyes, this is a terrible book." But I think I found an Elric book because I saw it was a beautiful cover with the big black sword and pale white like a wraith. It was like, that looks cool. What is this? And I read it and it was like, wow.
Yeah, because what Moorcock wanted to do with Elric was basically invert all the classic tropes of fantasy novels, like like Conan the Barbarian, like big, strong, hulking guy, and all the idea like Conan was this big, strong guy who was like didn't really have any feelings for anyone and wanted to be the king and rule everything and blah blah blah. And Elric is the exact opposite. He's this wimpy albino who has got no real strength, and instead of Conan, magic's all evil and bad, but in Elric's actually a sorcerer as well as a swordsman, and he's in love with one woman and sticks to it, and he is a king, but he doesn't want to be, and it's just the invert of the whole Tolkien and Howard kind of idea. And the elves are actually really evil and nasty.
Yeah, they're evil.
Yeah. The Milnivinians.
My first intro, though, to the fantasy, though, was Robert E. Howard, was Conan. Mm-hmm. And when I was a little, I got a Conan book from an uncle of mine. He had one of them, and again, had cool cover art on it. I think Conan was it was the Frank Frazetta.
Frank Frazetta, right, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, what was it? What's this?
Big
it's Conan.
Yeah.
But what was interesting about Conan is, I want to say 11 or 12, I had to rip out a dictionary because I'm like, what the hell's a scimitar? You're reading this stuff. And as that was the other thing too, is like when you're reading books like that, especially, it's the 80s, but I don't, he wrote those, in the 30s. So there's words in there that I'm just like, I don't know what that means. So I would just rip out the dictionary and, it was interesting. I actually really used to enjoy the Conans. And then, I evolved later on into the more in-depth stuff, the Moorcock stuff and things like that. I just, really, really good.
So comic books, what's your favorite comic book?
Series or the actual graphic?
Give me a graphic novel. Which graphic novel you want to take to your desert island?
Arkham Asylum.
Arkham Asylum, Grant Morrison.
Yep.
Right.
Artwork.
Who is also going to be on the show.
I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, Grant's already agreed to be on the show, so I'm hoping to have it. I'm not sure what week it's going to be, but yes, I will be. Grant Morrison will be on the show, and I didn't even set him up with that question. I didn't even know you.
Oh, I'm a huge Arkham Asylum. It's funny because I'm not a huge Batman fan.
Right.
But I love that's such a great. The artwork is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Who did the artwork in that? I can't remember.
I can't remember. It's
I can't remember either. Anybody remember who did the artwork in Arkham Asylum?
It starts with an M.
There's got to be some geek here.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
Ditto Mike says he's loving the show. Hi Mike, nice to see you, man. I'm glad you're watching. God, I can't remember who did the artwork in Arkham Asylum. I feel embarrassed now.
I'm looking right now.
We're losing great credibility by the second.
I know. I just can't think off the top of my head. My brain gets filled with multiple software. I got it.
He's cheating and looking it up on Google.
I am looking it up right now. Arkham Asylum.
It's live geekerness on the internet.
I know.
While we Google the answer to the questions.
Dave McKean.
Dave McKean, of course. Right.
Dave McKean.
Excellent.
And for some reason, I wanted to say I knew it started with an M. I was going to say Marshall for some reason, but.
So, are you a fan of The Invisibles? Speaking of Grant Morrison, that's the one. I
haven't read it.
You haven't read The Invisibles? Oh my God!
No.
Oh my fucking God! I mean, that is my Desert Island graphic novel. I think The Invisible. Right. I mean, I have the collected works. It's if you buy the collected works, it's literally the book. It's a hardback book, and it's literally I want to say about this wide, maybe more than the width of my hand. I mean, it's monumental. And I read it like twice from cover to cover, and I still have no idea what the hell happened at the end, because by the time you're about 2/3 of the way through, your brain has been so expanded that you're like, holy shit, this is incredible. So yeah, The Invisibles, that's my recommendation. Arkham Asylum also, folks.
When we were in LA together, I think you were showing me Promethea too.
Promethea, Alan Moore.
Yeah. Oh, that's Alan Moore. Okay.
That's Alan Moore.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah. Who doesn't really like Grant very much, but we won't go into that.
Oh yeah, we won't. Yeah,
and I probably will not be going into that during the Grant Morrison episode either, because But that's a great comic book. I'll give you that.
If you were going to tell me to take a series though with me, besides not just the novel, I'd probably take the Constantine series with me.
Constantine, really?
Yeah.
Oh well, that leads. You worked on the movie, right? With Keanu Reeves.
I did work on that movie.
Another Keanu Reeves movie you worked on.
I did. I worked on. It's so funny because I remember. I did a 3D scan of Keanu Reeves, and it's true. I've worked with him on several films, and so for the audience here, he is as nice as everybody says. He's a really, really nice guy. I mean, yeah, you'd have a hard time finding something bad to say about him. He is genuinely, yeah. And he's into music. I mean, he's into a lot of stuff.
He's in a band, right?
Yeah, he's totally into we used to talk about the Misfits, like the old punk band.
I think I've got a bit from I've got a show reel from you here, which I think has a bit of the Constantine stuff. Why don't we show the show reel and we can talk? Yes, thank you, X Studios Cleveland. Yes, please subscribe to my channel. Please follow the channel as X Studio suggests. We need your assistance. All right, let's run Brian's show reel and we'll have a little bit of a talk on some of the stuff here. Oh, where is it?
That's an old show reel.
This is an old show reel, yeah. But what the hell?
Yeah, see, from 13. That's old.
Okay. So let's. So what's that? This is Flight, right?
Flight. That's Flight. I actually did. I modeled. I rigged this. I textured it. I animated it, and my friend Mike Terpstra did the compositing on it. So it was like two of us on that shot.
So this is all animation again. Everything.
This is all. Yep. It's all digital. So yeah, this is a lot of the work we did. I was at a studio called Atomic Fiction at the time, and they were over in East Bay, California. Here, another really good crew. I mean, I love the small shops. Like I've worked at the big studios. I've worked at Weta and I worked at ESC, but your Zoics and your Atomic Fictions, where you just have a really small crew of talented people, things get done really quickly. And and it's hard to take on giant projects. Like we couldn't do an Avengers, right? But for smaller stuff, this is some facial replacement I did for Underworld.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is another one. That was a pain in the ass. Underwater facial replacement with bubbles. That was a barrel of monkeys.
Oh, Scrooge and Marley.
Yeah. This is
Christmas Carol.
This is like just doing. This is an ultimate. This is like it's funny because people think something like this is easy. But aging a sign in front of your eyes like this with the paint pulling off is not fun and not easy, especially when. And this was working with.
I didn't even notice that until now.
Real subtle, yeah. So did the initial character work for this, but then why am I spacing on who did the final on this? This is just some initial work that I did. The final shot we are seeing here was done by a huge team of people.
Mm-hmm.
But the very first Scrooge that we had to this is Bridge of Terabithia, which I did over at Weta. This was my first job. They were like, all right, make that bridge. Oh, there's the ship plowing into the operative ship that I was talking about with the icebreaker.
So that's your ship there, yeah. Icebreaker, yeah. And Serenity again, yeah.
Reaver Space. There's your ship getting torn apart.
That's me. It's the Orpheus 418.
That's the Orpheus 418 right there.
My moment of science fiction nerd culture.
That's it right there.
Heroism. I'm a ship named after me getting torn apart. Oh, well.
That's true. And the thing is, too, is I want to make
what
really
the hell is
clear,
this?
That's Battlestar Galactica.
That's Battlestar Galactica.
I worked on this. Me and the guy named John Daniel.
That's Matrix.
There's Constantine. Nope, it's Constantine.
Oh, it's Constantine, of course.
That's what's his name? The Gavin, whatever, from the band. That's Constantine. Getting hit by the bus.
This is something else. The wings.
Yep, so I built the wings. Now I didn't do the shading work. There was again a huge team, but I actually built. So and it's kind of funny because this is the early days of the early 2000s. I went online to find. I typed in Raven and I got nothing but a bunch of goth websites. And so I was trying to find Raven wings, So just finding wing anatomy was a pain. They originally were going to do the wings. I don't remember. I hate to call out studios because I'm not going to say who was originally assigned to do the wings, but they were going to do practical ones, and they showed up and.
What you mean? Actual real things that stuck onto her back?
Well, they were just gonna. What they usually do with something like this is they don't really stick them to the back. They have a rig behind somebody, and so they'll just kind of move the rig with them and do some compositing work. So the physical wings showed up, and they were tiny, like they was like Cupid wings. I mean, they wouldn't
like those 20-year-old girls wear to golf clubs on Halloween, exactly. Right?
So it didn't really have the epicness of what they were looking for this. So that was it was a scramble. Suddenly, it went from we had because when you're working on a film, you have a shot list and you know everything you're going to be working on, but then just like everything, things go sideways, and things went sideways, and suddenly we had the wings added onto the list. So yeah, right here. So I literally had to build those feather for feather, and we had. But again, like I said, it's never an individual effort.
Hang on, feather. But you animated every individual feather.
Okay, I didn't animate them. I built them. So I actually modeled the whole modeled the wing set, and then it passed off, and somebody texture painted the feathers, each feather. I mean, just beautifully. The fuzzy parts on the top, what we call the downy wings. We had a team member go in and put the fur on there. I know the rigger. I remember Tim Coleman was a rigging. He rigged the wings, if I recall. He was the rigging supervisor at the time. Beautiful job, because the feathers themselves too. If you watch them, they separate just like a bird's wing does. They don't stay together. When you watch, they're almost layered. So it's like feathers do this kind of thing. And remember, this was all in 2003 or 4. I think we worked on this. And at the same time, I know Harry Potter was coming out, and they had griffin wings. And I think they had just come out, and I remember my boss came to me and goes, I want those wings to look better than the Harry Potter wings. I'm like, okay. So, it's not, like I said, it's not an individual effort. It's a lot of people that go into doing shots like this. And then people have to take the live action shot and integrate it with the CG work that we did. But I think that was one of the best things that turned out in here. Those wings turned out just great. I was always really proud of those and the whole team that did it. And again, that's the one thing I want to keep coming back to is it's easy. A lot of people are like, oh, I did that shot. And going back to flight, yeah, I did almost everything on the shot for the cockpit. But in a lot of ways, it's far more simple than doing wings.
Right. Right. Because an engine's just, it's pretty much, it just sits there, right? It's not fluid.
Yeah. So on shots, a lot of these things, it's a huge team effort. It's definitely not an individual, and everybody just sort of does their part,
Right.
So just like this, it's like everybody worked on something different. Somebody modeled the body. I think I did the initial
this
head.
classic fight scene.
And this is the Burley Bro. So this is the very first test we actually did. And there were some problems with it. I mean, it's obviously, not a complete work of at the time. It was one of the best things out there.
Oh, I remember at the time watching it, just being absolutely blown away by it. I mean, look at that.
Yeah,
the coat is like having that big swirly coat was a genius move.
I had to build Keanu Reeves' head. I must have done 20 versions of that. In fact, that was funny. I was talking about the visual effects supervisor, Kim Library, who's now one of the heads of Epic Games. Mm-hmm. So he runs Epic's studio up here in California, Larkspur. Great. He was actually, him and Joe Lettieri of Weta were definitely my two favorite visual effects supervisors of all time. Kim Library, he was my very, very first, I would say, real visual effects supervisor I ever worked with, and to this day, he's probably the best. Like I love him. He's, but he's also very demanding. Not in a noodly way, but he has a really high standard. And pretty much all the really good VFX supes I've worked with, they have a really good way of getting the best out of you.
Right.
They know they will push you, and sometimes you're swearing under your breath at them, or you go home mad, but it's not personal. They're just trying to get the very best out of you.
Right.
And those are the good ones. And Kim was always really good at getting our best out of us for things like this.
Yeah. So, there's the truck crash scene that we opened up with. Yeah. With San Francisco in the background.
Yeah.
All right. Was that you building Keanu's head again?
I did. It was being the same head over and over again once it was.
Right.
But, we had to do all these different variants of it. And I actually had to, in the early days, blending from one head to another head was, nowadays, it's not a big deal. But back then, getting it to, and it's funny, the software you're using right now, which is New Tech software, I actually ended up using a lot of their software, Lightwave, back then on the Matrix films, because it did certain things that Maya and other stuff didn't do at the time. So
right, I remember. Did I visit you at New Tech once? I think way back in the day. Yeah. I remember you had like a whole room, literally an entire room full of servers, rendering for like 2 days or something, just to do like 2 seconds of movie.
Yeah.
Man, those were the days.
I know, the Lightwave office back in the day. I was actually, when I was in graduate school, I was working for. I got hired at Lightwave because I was doing my graduate dissertation on subdivision surfaces, and they were the first ones to actually put that in there. That's really in-depth geeky. Nobody's interested in, but if you're like 3D, it's.
Hey, don't sell yourself short. We've got some very in-depth geeks here. Vixen's really enjoyed. She loved the Matrix stuff. I loved the Matrix stuff. I mean, that fight scene was just spectacular. It was so good, so good.
Oh, I know. I gotta read this. Obsidian, but thank you, Obsidian Vixen.
All right. Well, talking to video games, okay, what's your Desert Island video game? You said you played Elite Dangerous earlier, so do I. I've got my Hodas right here.
Take one video game with me to
one video game.
Oh, that's tough. I like that's the God. It would have to either there's the old the old Planescape Torment.
Planescape Torment. That. Oh, classic.
That might be one. Skyrim. I love that.
Have you tried the VR version yet?
Not yet.
It's on sale this week, and my Oculus Rift is sitting up there feeling really, really, really lonely. So I am seriously tempted to get the Skyrim VR.
And then Stalker Call Pripyat would be the other one.
Stalker, another classic. Okay.
I know.
Yeah. Well, I may try streaming Skyrim VR, except that would mean me standing here with a headset on, bumping into things, which would either be really cringeworthy or absolutely hilarious. I'm not quite sure which it would be. So I will take votes on shall I stream me in VR or not. I really don't know. But Skyrim in VR, I think, could be cool because it's all first person anyway. So anything that's basically first person in VR is fun. Like I play Elite in VR. That's what I got the Rift for, and it's Elite in VR.
I've been afraid to do that because I'm afraid I'll never come back.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty freaking stunning, man. I mean, it is pretty weird, but amazing. Ruben said, DCC, it's Ruben. Hey, Ruben. Hilarious. It would be hilarious. Ferry said she wants to see it. XG says, don't stream the game, just me stumbling around. Yeah, thanks so much. I'll just do full screen of me stumbling around with the game in a little tiny window in the corner, right? We believe in you. It will be great. Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll have to see about that, shall we? Speaking of video games, so that's a. Oh, David's got to run. Okay, David, nice having you with us. You can always watch.
David, good seeing you again.
So you can always watch the rest of the stream on Twitch or on Facebook or on YouTube or whatever thing this ends up on. We'll have it up there. So talking about video games, let's have some video games because you've been working on video games a lot recently. So
Yep,
let's
7 years,
check.
that's what I did.
Let's check the latest one.
And this is sort of an evolution to the humans that we were working on before when I was working on Matrix. So I actually worked at a company here called Pixel Gun Studios up here in San Rafael. And what we did is specialize in capturing the players' heads and actors' heads in something called photogrammetry. So the idea of photogrammetry is you take, it sounds like it's photographs. So we had a rig of 150 cameras that were basically in a sphere.
Wait, 150 cameras?
Yes.
In a sphere,
they shoot simultaneously. So when those cameras fire simultaneously, they capture it from 150 angles. The software then goes back in and assembles those 150 angles into a 3D version of the person you're looking at. So one of the bonuses of doing
Thomas
that,
Middleton,
say like
Idris
laser.
Elba, Rosario Dawson, right?
I actually built Idris myself, and I built Rosaria myself for this based off of that camera information.
Wow! So you animated Rosario Dawson and Idris Elba for the game?
I didn't animate him. I just built the CG asset.
Oh, I see.
And
right?
then,
yeah.
So what we do then is we give the CG asset over to 2K Games, and from there, what 2K Games would do is we give them some initial textures and a model with the facial shapes that can be animated. So it's what's called phonemes.
Right.
So Dr. Eichmann's fact session, which is like smile and jaw open and things like that. The things that let somebody talk, so they can animate the talking, puckering, like things like this. So we pass all this over to 2K Games. They integrate it into their game engine, and they'll go in and tune the surface shaders, clean up any texture stuff that we didn't maybe get to. They add the hair, they do the animation, but we give them the initial assets for it all. So we, at the time, we were doing, at the height of a season, like during what we call Summer League for basketball, we'll do, last year I think we did 150 for the women's NBA, and we did, I want to say 70, maybe 100 people for rookies. Plus they had what they call influencers. And it's not just one shape, it's 15 shapes per head, and sometimes 22. So if you do the math on it, that's 2,000 models, and done in like a couple of months with 7 textures per head. So you have a color map and a wrinkle map and occlusion, all these different things. So we deliver those really in real specific form to 2K Games. And so that's actually what I've done the last 7 years is working with that Photogrammetry studio. I left them in December, and I work for a place called Dreamview Studios now, which specializes in AR and VR.
Amazing. So, wow. Okay. So what other games have you worked on apart from basketball, NBA?
Wrestling. We worked on all the WWE games as well.
All right.
And I actually got to, it's funny, I traveled, everybody laughs when I say wrestling, especially because I do jiu-jitsu and stuff, but I traveled with those guys for a week. And I got to say, that was so fun. They were the nicest people, and they loved their fans. I had a whole new appreciation for professional wrestling after a week with them. Their workouts in the morning are incredible. They heavy on cardio. It's not like you'd think they'd be all lifting weights and muscle bound, but it's that performance in the ring. And if you've ever done any wrestling, yeah. Now I've fought the longest rounds I've ever fought have been 10-minute rounds, and it's exhausting. I mean, you're constantly, and I have a heavily resisting partner, obviously, who's trying to submit me at the same time I'm trying to submit them. But watching these guys doing the acrobatics is just, you have to, if you've ever done burpees where you're just, getting down and getting up off the mat, and you're watching these guys getting thrown and having to get back up again quickly and perform. And these aren't 10-minute matches. These can run for a long time. So their athletic ability, their ability to just do so is just mind-bending to me. And like I said, as people, they were incredibly nice. They love their fans. I mean, they really appreciate them. I really, that was one of the most fun I've ever had on the road with anybody, was being on the road with the WWE people. And it's funny because everybody's like, oh, those fake wrestlers are fake. It's a predetermined outcome, definitely, but nothing they're doing up there is fake. I mean, that is a lot of practice, a lot of timing, a lot of trust. And you watch, why am I spacing with her name? Ronda Rousey, who does WWE now. You watch her do a hip throw or an arm bar on somebody, you can just see the precision. She's really good. The other person is taking that fall really well, but they're taking care of each other. They have to. You have to trust your partner.
Right.
And so, listening to them tell stories and jokes, it was really fun. I mean, I have to say it was one of the funnest being on the road with any crew of all time, was being on the road with professional wrestlers. So.
All right.
Yeah.
And Ferry Faffle's got a question. He said, you ever seen the work Griffin McElroy did with the WWE games?
I don't think so.
All right. Okay. Well, there's your
the
answer.
Character creator. Yeah, I think I maybe not by name, but I've seen some of it's the in-game character creator, right? I think you're talking about where people can go in and make their own characters. If I don't know people by name, but I've seen some really amazing work that people have done. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're coming up to the hour, so we'll have one more. Monster Factory. Ah.
All right. Okay, I'll have to take a look at that.
Okay. So, kind of another random number between 1 and 20. I need to put a dice roller into this thing. I need to put a D20.
Why don't you just have a dice in front of you?
Yeah, my dice. I should have dice in front of me. What? I feel humble.
Here,
I don't have a D20 at my hand on my desk. This is a terrible thing. Somebody give me a random number between 1 and 20.
I just rolled one. I'm rolling one right now because you go D20 roller on Google, and actually a D20 roller comes up. Did you know that?
I did not know that. But
I did not either until I just rolled it, and it came up 16.
16, okay.
Yeah.
16, okay. A luxury item that you can take to your desert island with no real utility value, but something, just a complete luxury.
I don't even know what that means. Do I have power on the desert island?
Yeah, why not? Let's just, you're in quarantine. You've got power. You've got a generator on your desert island. What luxury item would you take with you? You can have anything you want. Anything from a Ferrari down. Even a Lamborghini down. Yeah.
Pass.
You don't have,
I don't know. I can't.
You're so ascetic, aren't you? You don't really have any luxuries. You don't want a luxury item. All you want is things to wrestle or kill, you know?
I finally think, sometimes I think of my, jiu-jitsu training partner. There's my luxury item.
That's not a luxury item. God. Okay, now I think we've seen it. We're getting a really interesting look into the unconscious of Brian Freisinger when he can't actually think of anything luxurious, because you're so motivated with everything you do. I mean, that's what I love about you, Brian. I really respect that. It's like you're so freaking focused. It has to have some utilitarian value. As soon as somebody asks you for something with no utility value, you're like, what? How can this be?
I used to my wife. So the same thing. It's like when I'm buying shoes. The old joke is like, can I run in them and can I fight in them? And she's like, she rolls her eyes at me. I'm like, they're nice, but can I run in them and can I fight in them? So yeah.
All right. So I think we're on the hour of the show. We don't want to run too far, and though I'm sure we could sit here and talk for a long time. Any of you got any last questions for Mr. Brian Freisinger?
I am watching the thing right now.
Now's your chance, ladies and gentlemen.
That's almost everything. You didn't ask favorite band. I was going to say Cassandra Complex.
Well, thank you for that, but I wouldn't. I mean, okay. Well, if you're allowed one album, what's the album going to be then? Since we're on music, and you don't need to say one of mine. It's okay.
Oh. That's
one album. Come on.
It would have to be a greatest hits album, obviously.
That'll do. We can accept that.
I'd either take I'd flip a coin between the Police or Led Zeppelin greatest hits.
The Police.
I love the Police, dude. Always have. I know.
The Police. You're really a child of a particular generation, aren't you? If
exactly.
You like the Police.
Yes, I am. And
the
that's what it
police
is.
is greatest
Every time I
hits,
hear the police, it's kind of like the 80s
message
for me, right?
in a bar. But hey,
Yeah,
but funny you should mention that, because that also ties into another guest we're going to have on the show in a few weeks' time.
Oh,
which
I know
is,
who that is.
do you know who that is? Who is it then?
It's the drummer, probably, right?
No, it's not Stuart. Though I have actually worked with Stuart. I did make a record with Stuart Copeland. He played the drums in my kitchen, which was.
I know you're going to tell the Stuart Copeland story about when Kathy lived there.
I'll tell you that some other time. But no, we're gonna have a guest who's associated with the police, because we're gonna have Kevin Godley on the show, and Kevin Godley was the singer in 10cc and in Godley and Cream, but he also shot the videos for the police. You know that amazing video for is it Every Breath You Take with all the candles everywhere? Yeah, Kevin shot that.
I would love to hear that story, because that looked like an accident waiting to happen. Nowadays, you probably never get away with shooting that today, because somebody would go in and be like, no. So, okay, just for then I'll probably go with a Led Zeppelin album, so since the police are not.
Okay, what, Photogrammetry? I mean, you can't go wrong with Led Zeppelin. I mean, I mean, that is a band I can never get tired of.
We've talked about In Through the Outdoor. You and I both like that one. That's one of the ones that nobody seems to like except for the two of us. That's
a brilliant record that people just completely sleep on. Into the Outdoor.
I think people don't even know about it sometimes.
Yeah, I know. It's weird, isn't it? But yeah, great album. Good choice. All right. Well, I think that's the end of our show for tonight. Thank you very much indeed for being here, everybody. And thank you for everybody in the chat. It's been great. I'm intending to do these every week from now on. I got a whole stable of guests lined up, which should be good. I'm going to actually, as soon as I manage to program the chatbot a little bit better, there'll be some giveaways. I've got a bunch of Steam codes for different games that I'm going to be giving away in the future as well. And thank you. Ix says it's a good show, and thank you very much, Brian, for being the pilot.
You're welcome.
And we were just chatting earlier. Brian was saying, like, I know I'm the pilot for this because it's like I'm not so important because it's the first show. If we were like talking about this, like, he's like, if everything goes wrong, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter, right? And like Rodney and I have been friends for 30 years now, I think. So. We've known each other for a long, so it's an easy. I'll trust him with anything. So he's like, "Hey, you want to do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Rodney says it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, I'll accept that.
Exactly.
Yes, there will be free stuff, Pope Black. Thank you. That coming up in the next weeks. So yeah, there will be raffles and giveaways every week in the future. Not tonight because there's enough things just trying to get this work. Just trying to get the mute button working right was difficult enough. Thank you, Vixen. I'm glad you enjoyed the show.
Glad you liked it. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Brian.
You're welcome.
You mean, I love your stuff, man. I love you. You're great. So, thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you again soon. Bye.
All right.